there, everyone. Welcome back to Hello Friends. I am your host, Brandy Wilson. Just a quick reminder for those of you who did not see the announcement, Chrissy has decided to step away from in front of the camera for a little bit. But in her absence, I have asked Kayla Kirkpatrick, my dear friend, to sit in and help co-host. So welcome, Kayla.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla. I'm very, very excited to be here today. I've known Brandy now for probably a little over a year.
1 year, yay!
Yeah, it's been over a year, barely, but we're there.
Yep.
But it does feel like forever. We talk all the time and, just glad to be part of the gang and get to spend some time with you and talk through the story. Today's episode is entitled, Did You Know? Because we're going to talk about Brandy, something that I don't think she talks about very often. But did you know that her neighbor was a serial killer?
Most people don't know that. I don't talk about it. It is kind of traumatic for me because when you're like 16 and you find out like your neighbor has killed a bunch of women and that something very tragic happened to this person that you knew personally. It's not something that you kind of want to talk to people about. And I don't think very many of my close friends even know about this. My husband, I think, knows, and maybe 2 or 3 other people. But
Wow.
not. So when I told you, you were like, are you kidding? I'm
Yeah.
like, no, this really happened. So no, people don't know about this story. And it's been everywhere. It's been nationwide. It's been on podcasts. It's been on Forensic Files. I think it's been on Oxygen. So it's not something that's not known. Just people don't know that part about me.
Yeah. And you said you were 16 when this was happening. So and this was in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking, your parents are letting you watch all the news. You're hearing all this stuff. Like you're not being...
No. I was like outside doing stuff and going to my friend's house and like living life. And then all of a sudden there's police tape on my street and you can't walk home because they won't let you on to your street. So it was weird because you don't know what's happening and what's going on. You're just like, okay, well, all right. And you tell the police officer, hey, I live right there. Can I like get right there? And they tell you, yeah, but there was a murder that happened. Huh? What? No, that didn't happen.
Yeah. And that was, at that point, that was with Emilita. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So was he living, at what point did he move in next to you? Was he with her or was it prior to her as well?
So he always lived on our street. It was him and her, and they had a little boy. They lived maybe 5 or 6 houses down from us. So they had always lived on the street as far as I knew. He was older. Just so you guys know, his name is Jack Reeves. His wife's name was Emilita. They lived around the corner from us, and they had always lived there. And during the summer, in the 90s, everyone was outside. And so all the kids knew her, and she was young. So she knew all the teenagers on the street because she was always outside with her baby. So it wasn't like she was a stranger to me. I knew exactly who she was. He was very quiet. He didn't say a whole lot to anybody. And he was kind of curt when the kids and stuff would come around. But no one thought anything of it because, of course, again, it's the 90s. You're a teenager. No one thinks to like say, oh, well, there's something off about them. And then all of a sudden she just was not there. She disappeared.
Yeah. So I think what's crazy for me, because as soon as you tell me, right, I am all about the true crime life. I need to know, want to know. So I'm immediately digging in. It's crazy to me because there's such a long history, even before Emilita, on
him. And no one knows about it. Yeah.
But again, it's like when you hear these stories and you think back to the 90s, we weren't communicating like that yet. Mm-mm. Like it wasn't so widespread. We weren't sharing all these details. like across areas and like geographically, we just weren't going through. You wouldn't have known that he killed a man in Italy and served, 4 to 6 months there back before he ever came back to the U.S. And that was with, in technicalities, his second wife, who is the first conviction he ends up getting against him.
Yeah, but they didn't. So they didn't talk about that until after everything happened with Emilita. So on my side of the story, she disappeared. No one knew where she was. Her family started looking for her, and our neighborhood started looking for her too. And then all of a sudden, her SUV was found at it's Hypermart, but it is changed the name to Walmart. So Hypermart was huge. There was only like 3 in the country at this time. It was back when super Walmarts were like malls. And so he took her car and parked her car there, and no one knew where she was. She was just gone. She just vanished. And so there's this manhunt for this woman because her child was also left behind. What happened was several months later, the police actually staked out their house, and there was always, I remember it distinctly, this gray Ford parked around the corner with 2 men that would just watch the street. They just constantly watched our street. And when you're a teenager and you're like walking to your friend's house and stuff, and you're kind of leery.
Yeah, especially as a female, I feel like we don't have a choice but to be.
And that was back when like we didn't have Ubers and stuff, so we were walking. And so there was always this car parked outside. And I remember going home and telling my mom, I'm like, hey, have you seen this car around the corner? She's like, I have. So she's like, stay away from it. Okay, cool. And that was it. Didn't know who they were. They didn't talk to us. They just sat there and watched constantly. They sat there and watched. And then about a month after Emilita had been missing, Mr. Reeves pulled all the carpet out of his house.
Yeah, because the detective at that point so from what I had went through and researched, the detective at this point was very suspicious of Jack, obviously. And they had found out at this point that, he had probably killed his 2 prior wives as well. And like all of that is going through. So the detective went to him. This is back when DNA, like forensic type evidence is just really
getting started.
Yep. So the detective told him some fake story about like, oh, when you die, your DNA like goes into the carpet, and no matter what you do, no matter how much you clean it, what you use, like it'll never come out of the carpet. Like the only way to get rid of it is to rip your carpet out, like, and put new carpet in.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the detective tells him this fake story, and then they set people off to the side to watch the house to see what he would do. They were just undercover, like policemen sitting there watching to see like, okay, now what does he do? Is he going to take his carpet out? Because at the time, the detective was like, there's no reason for him to change his carpet unless I tell him this and he feels like he needs to. And sure enough, the very next day, he rips all his carpet out.
The carpet was on the curb, which was kind of odd because that carpet wasn't very old.
Yeah, that's what the detective was saying. Like, there was no reason that he should need it, like that he needed to change the carpet right then.
No. And so all the carpet was on the curb. And I do remember his sons coming over, and his son, because he had 2 sons from his first wife. And his sons
from Sharon?
His sons were very perplexed as to where Emilita was, because they really did like her, and why he was pulling the carpet out. And soon after that, Jack bought a boat. There was no boat in the driveway. And then after the carpet got pulled out, he bought a boat. So there was a lot of activity happening at that house.
Very quickly after her going missing.
Yeah. There was a lot going on, and nobody could understand, like, what is happening? Like, okay, you must have came into some insurance money because you got new carpet, you bought a boat, the boys are showing up now. What's really going on? So that, for at least from my standpoint, was just kind of strange. And then all of a sudden, he was arrested. And that's when the story really started unfolding with our neighbors and what had happened in his past.
Yeah.
And stuff that happened to Emelita in the house, which no one really knew about.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I think the only people who were really aware were her very closest friends, because it was rumored that Jack had said to Emelita on multiple occasions, like, I will kill you like I've killed my prior wives. So at that point, like, she has to somewhat be very cautious of who she's telling and what she's saying, because you don't want to be the next.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really in depth. There was a lot of things that I think, you know, she had found out he had been having an affair. Then she ended up having affairs as well. And she was in a relationship with someone else. And he had said that she had ran off with that lover to...
Yeah, he did say that. He said that on the news.
But what was crazy, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to Brandy today because I want to know if you know this. But there was a rumor that, okay, so in 1991 or 92, so this is a few years prior to her disappearance, she had her son, or she had gotten pregnant, and he sent Emelita actually back to the Philippines saying that that was not his kid.
Wow.
And she was gone for a while, and then she had sent him pictures, and he brought her back in 1992 or 93, somewhere in that realm, just saying like, oh, okay, from the picture, I think this kid actually is mine, and had them come back to the States with him. But it was rumored that in that time frame, there was a young Russian woman that he had moved into the house.
She had blonde hair?
Blonde hair. Yeah, okay. So that's what they were saying, was like, if you lived in this neighborhood, you would not... like you would know her, you would see her.
Yeah.
She didn't talk a lot. She was pretty quiet, but you would see her in the neighborhood. And then she just all of a sudden went missing as well. Like she just was gone after a few weeks.
She wasn't allowed to really talk to anybody, to be honest. Like you would see her come and go. But as far as like in our neighborhood was really close. There was a lot of like young people on our neighborhood. It you know, it was a suburban neighborhood in Arlington, Texas. So we would see her. That's how I knew. I was like, oh, there's a blonde lady that used to be there.
Yeah. I think they said her name was Natalie, or that's what people had thought. But even with investigators like asking regularly, Jack never gave her full information.
Yeah. And see, the neighbors didn't know much about her because, again, she didn't talk to anybody. And we were a close-knit neighborhood. Like everybody knew everybody in the neighborhood. And I forgot she was there.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that I thought was crazy, because I had seen, it looked like there were some pieces that were kind of wrote more back in that time frame. And it had just, you know, quotes from neighbors. But, you know, you don't ever really know. It's the internet. You don't know how real any of this is, right? So that's why I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to Brandy because I want to know. But, I mean, they had said that when Natalie ended up leaving, he said the exact same thing about her and Emelita, that they were going up to the hypermart because they were running off with a lover. And I would just remember reading in there, one of the quotes, the neighbor was like, it didn't stick out to me until Emelita went missing, but he said the exact same thing for both women.
That's weird. He must have had a fixation with the hypermart.
Yeah, he really liked that place.
I mean, everybody did. Like if you were around and you were, it literally was a mall. Hypermart had designer clothes. It had like real jewelry. It had like Super Walmarts right now, they have maybe 1 or 2 restaurants. We had 7. There were 7 restaurants in there. There was a cobbler in there. Like it was massive. It was massive. Everybody wanted to be in there. Now, you're not going to catch me near anything that says Mart on the back of it. But
the shade.
Yeah, like, I'm not. But then, yeah, that was like the spot. And we would go just to hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, but back then I think that was more of a thing overall as well.
Yeah.
Because, people would go hang out at the malls, would go hang out like wherever. Like you actually went places and just met up with your friends. It didn't really matter where you were. You were just trying to hang out back then. Because we didn't have as much access. You couldn't just like be texting with your friends all day or like whatever. Yeah, what was that?
We had plans and maps and schematics.
Yeah, literally. It
was like at 7:42.
Yeah.
Go to the gas station. I'm going to call you. Make sure you answer the phone at 7:42. I'm going to tell you where I'm at.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is something you did back then is like go hang out somewhere. So, I mean, I understand it being a popular place, but I mean, how many people were meeting up at the hypermart?
A lot. I'm telling you a lot.
But to me, a lover to like run off, like supposedly Natalie was running off to Washington. They gonna meet at the hypermart.
I mean, it was the hot spot back then. I mean, hypermart, it was doing some things. You don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know.
In the 90s, I was in East Texas. It was very small.
Yeah, no. I mean,
had Brookshires.
Arlington was not that huge either. I know what it is now because the stadium is here and there's a lot of things that
Everything
are here.
Built out.
Yeah. But in 94, literally the only thing that was in Arlington was Wet and Wild. I'm going to age myself. Wet and Wild, which is now Hurricane Harbor. Yeah, that part. Six Flags. Yeah, and back then it was Six Flags over Texas.
Over Texas, yeah.
It wasn't just Six Flags. It was Six Flags over Texas. And the Parks Mall had literally just opened in 1989. And so when Hypermart came, it was massive. That was like the thing. Because, we had Kmart, and I think we had a little, no, we didn't even have a Target. We didn't have a Target yet. So Hypermart was like huge. But to say both your women just gonna go to the hypermart and just like peace out on you, that's kind of suspicious.
Yeah, especially after the wife right before them had drowned and she hated water.
Okay, you got to talk about that because people don't know.
There's so much back history that I think is just like, it's like you understand that for the time why it wasn't caught as much, I guess. Like you try to be understanding to that, but at the same time, it's just so hard because it's like every single situation.
So we're going to talk about his first wife. So Jack Reeves' first wife.
Well, actually, so Jack Reeves got married at 18 for his first wife, but the girl was 15 and her parents got it annulled. So in a lot of stories, it kind of gets confusing because sometimes they refer to like Emilita as his third wife.
And she says fourth.
And sometimes people say the fourth, but that's why there is that confusion because he did get married. She was underage and her parents ended up fighting it, got it annulled. Not even a year later, that's when he marries Sharon.
Okay. So Sharon, I believe, is his two older sons' mother.
Yes.
Sharon was a victim of domestic violence, which all these women are, which is why we're talking about this, because oftentimes things happen in the household that no one knows about, nobody talks about, which lead to men like Mr. Reeves committing multiple murders. So Sharon was his technically second wife. Mm-hmm. They had two children. I don't know what year they were married.
I have it written down.
I want to say the early 70s.
So they got married in 1961.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so they got married a year after my parents actually did.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently it's his second wife because I didn't know about the first wife. She accidentally shoots herself with a shotgun.
Yeah. Not accidentally. So he
That's the report I read.
This whole story was so crazy because I literally want to go back, grab the cop by his shoulders and like shake him and be like, what were you doing, sir? So, okay. Jack Reeves enlists into the army when he is with Sharon. They get stationed over in Italy, and that's where actually his first victim occurs, is actually in Italy. So they're over there. He claimed that there was an Italian man who was stalking him, and his wife, Sharon, said that this guy was spying on him. So he fired a warning shot that ricocheted off an iron pole and hit this man straight in the chest.
I feel like he just shot him point blank.
Yeah, I think so too. And all of that actually happened. So that was back in 1967. So at this point, him and Sharon have been together about 6 years. This occurs over in Italy. He does get imprisoned over there for about 4 to 6 months, but his mom is back in Texas getting a petition in place and all of this, and actually gets it to President Johnson, who helps get Jack out of prison in Italy.
You gotta be kidding me.
I am not. I'm not. So he ends up getting released, and him and Sharon come back to the U.S. at that point. So all of that's happening, and then it kind of jumps forward from there. So they stay together, but he also stayed in the military, so he would get deployed a lot. And at this point, she's not going with him overseas anymore. They have kids. Well, the kids were with them in Italy, which was wild. But I'm sure she's like, listen, I'm not going to a different country for you to shoot somebody and me be raising our children.
Well, I'm sure she was scared because,
Yeah,
he's
abusive.
On her. Yeah,
he's abusive.
And her family knew that he was beating her up. I'm not making excuses, but in the 60s and the early 70s, men beat their wives a lot and nobody said anything.
Yeah, it sadly was just a very common occurrence.
It was just what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that there's laws in place now so that doesn't happen, because nobody deserves to be abused. But she was getting beat up a lot, and her kids saw it. Her kids saw a lot of stuff that was happening in the home.
Yeah, we're going to get there. And I literally, again. Brandy.
I'm sorry about this story.
So, no, I love it. I literally, honestly, when you brought this up, it really kind of took me home for a minute because, for people who don't know me, I'm from a very small town in East Texas. My family was from there for generations. And there was a lot of similar things, where people would die and things got swept under the rug, but you would hear stories and you would know who did it, even though nothing was happening. And, when that's what you kind of grow up in. And like I said, in the 90s, we weren't being sheltered. They were not monitoring what we were seeing or hearing as children. So I grew up with kind of that fascination of it all. So don't be sorry for bringing this up, because even though it's a horrible thing to talk about, at the same time, I think that it's important to remember and talk about the victims. And, there are still people that are affected because of the loss that, this monster has caused. So at the same time, it's good to talk about it. But yeah, so he's stationed over in Korea. This is like February 1978. Mm-hmm. She, at this point, sends him divorce papers. And he does get served in Korea. He immediately comes back. And then by July of 1978, The cops are called to the house. She is naked on the bed with a shotgun wound to her chest. The shotgun is sitting straight up between her legs, and Jack and the 10-year-old son at the time are standing in the room by the body. And that's why I was like, it's awful, because he really let these kids see way too much.
I'm pretty sure they actually saw everything that happened.
Yeah. And not just them, but later on, Emelita's son as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're standing right there, and he tells the cop that she put her toe in
on the trigger. Yeah.
The trigger and shot herself in the chest. There was a suicide note written on the that was left on the cabinet from her, saying that she just was too torn between staying with him and her new lover. And it's crazy because it's like, here we go. This really sets it off. She threatens to leave. Now she's dead. Mm-hmm. The kids have seen it all. Mm-hmm. And from some of those reports, and again, this is rumor, and maybe you know more of this portion since you had more of that like firsthand experience with it all. But I mean, it was rumored that the cops felt like he did act very suspicious throughout it because he didn't really seem to care a whole lot.
No, I do know that he and his sons fled whatever town that they were living in. I don't know if he took the boys back to Korea or what, but I do know that he ended up being with those two boys for the rest of their life. And these were men in their late 20s, early 30s when I met them. And they were very scared and very leery of their father. And no one knew why.
Yeah, you can't imagine what they've seen at that point.
No. And they were nice. They were really nice young men. And I remember they were the same age as my brother. And they were very nice. They were very nice to Emelita as well. And they were always at the house, always at the house. They didn't live there, but they were always there.
I wonder if they were trying to buffer.
Probably or so.
Save her. In the,
yeah. Because she was a lot younger than Jack.
Yeah.
She was 21 maybe.
No. So when her and Jack meet and get married, she's 18 and he is 28 years older than she is. So she's 18, he's 46.
So she's 3 years older than me at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, she's 3 years older than me. No wonder she was outside hanging out with teenagers.
Yeah, she was very, very young, and she was reluctant to marry him because of that. But I think ultimately, she's from the Philippines, right? So how he ends up coming across Emelita is through Cherry Blossoms, the Melt Order Bride magazine.
We'll get there because I want to talk about his wife.
The next one.
Yes, his wife after Sharon. Because after Sharon is suspiciously commits suicide, and I believe from the autopsy report, she had a whole bunch of bruises on her when she was shot too.
Well, that's what's crazy. They didn't even do any of that until
later.
Emelita's disappearance.
Yeah. But she did. She had broken bones and she had bruises because from the pictures of her murder, because they did take a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, and that's how I think they were able to tell. I read somewhere that the a blood splatter analyst actually said that she wasn't even nude when she was killed. She was in her undergarments, but when the cops get there,
she had no clothes on.
Yep, but there was no blood where those areas would have covered.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know a whole lot about his second wife.
So from there, he ends up going back to Korea, and in December of 1980, he marries a lady named, and I am probably going to pronounce this wrong, so my apologies, but Myung. She is a Korean lady. there's not a whole lot of information on her, which is, to me, very sad because I would rather learn more about the victims than
him,
the monster. Yeah. But there wasn't a lot of detail on her, just that she was also very, very young. She marries him. They come back over to the States. And after getting married in 1980, he retires from the Army in 1985. And in 1986, they are camping near Waco at Lake Whitney, and she drowns.
Yeah, I knew that she drowned in Lake Whitney. I didn't know the circumstances behind how she drowned.
So he claimed that she was relaxing. She was on a float in the open water, just relaxing, and then had fallen off and panicked and couldn't get up, and she drowned.
Do you know how big Lake Whitney is? I'm just...
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. So they're in like this creek bed area, coming off of Lake Whitney, right? But her family in the Philippines is like, hold on, pause. She's terrified of water. She doesn't know how to swim. She does not, she's always been terrified of water, refused to get on boats, refused to do anything on the water. And you want me to believe that she said, you know what sounds super good right now? I'm just going to go float in this water.
In this big ass lake. Where people, by the way, people drown in Lake Whitney all the time.
I know, all the time. Almost like every Texas lake, I feel like, if we're being really honest.
Every summer, there's about 7 casualties in Lake Whitney. Every summer.
Yeah. Yeah. So for her family is all back in Korea, and only her sister was able to get here for the services and stuff. She notices that there's bruising on Mi-young's face, and they had received letters a few weeks prior to her passing that she was trying to find a way to leave him because of the abuse.
Aww.
Yeah. So, I mean, just, you've got to imagine that if he was saying the stuff that he was saying to Imelita, that he was saying it to her as well. And so you can't imagine what all she truly went through. And I hate that more of her story is not known, not available. And
he married her like 2 years after his first, it wasn't, it might a year and a half after his first wife, allegedly
shot herself with her toe.
Yeah. Commit suicide. That's awful. So he's killed 3 people in a span of maybe a decade right now. 3 people. Mm-hmm. And then he meets Imelita. What did you say, 90? Yeah.
So from there, he ends up, she passes in 1986. Within a year, he's married to Imelita.
Within a year. So
of the passing, within a year, he is married to Imelita.
So this wife number 4, so pretty much like every few years, you're just going to go get another one.
Well, when it's as easy as ordering whatever woman you want out of a magazine.
Okay, so you said he found her off of Cherry Blossom?
Yeah, so Cherry Blossom's back in this time frame. And I say that because it is still a thing today, just a different thing. But back then, Cherry Blossoms was for you to order a bride, right? So mail order bride service, you look through there and it is all different types of Asian women for you to just pick and choose from. So actually, Imelita had 3 different people, I think they had said, that were calling her dad to choose her. Mm-hmm. And Jack showed up and offered more money than everyone else. So
it's just slavery.
Yep. Just under a different form.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not great. And I'm sure it's not any better today, sadly.
I know. Now you just look people up on the internet and you can just bring them on over.
Yeah, Cherry Blossoms is now actually a website. Still does the same thing pretty much. Just a bunch of old men on there that are looking for young women who they can send money to the family to marry their daughter.
So you're just buying a woman.
Yep.
On the internet. It's just, so it is. It's just slavery. You're selling these young women into slavery.
Yep. And back late 1980s, same thing, but just out of a magazine. So he offers the dad more money. The dad convinces her. Like I said, she's reluctant. She's like, this man is old. I am not about to do this.
You got to think of all the things that these young women end up going through when they're sold like that. They are subjected to being raped. They're subjected to being beaten, starved. There's all kinds of things. When like you purchase a person, essentially, he felt like I own you, so I can kill you if you don't do what I want you to do.
If you want to leave with a different lover, I'll just kill you because you're mine.
Yep.
And it's awful.
Yeah. So, like, I knew she was a mail order bride, but I think that was just me being naive, thinking, oh, these are just women who want a different opportunity. Not so much these are teenagers and, like, minors.
This is an 18-year-old girl who had her family convince her that, and here's the thing, I don't blame her family, right? But told that story, planted that seed of, if you go do this, it's just the sacrifice for the family. It's the sacrifice for the well-being of the family. You go do this, we're all okay because we get the money that's being sent to us. Because at the time, Emelita's dad is making $3 an hour, and Jack starts sending him $250 a month.
Oh, wow.
So, like, you're talking, like, life-changing money for your family. So, of course, like, I'm not saying her family pushed her into it, but once she is told, like, this is going to save the family, you're going to go do it.
Yeah.
Like, especially, I feel like as a female, like, I know for me, I would make that call 1,000 times. If it meant saving my family, like, I would do things I wouldn't normally do to save my family.
But there's always another way. There's always another way. And, you know, selling your child into a marriage that she probably doesn't want to be in.
The guy's 28 years older than her.
That's an old man. And
he could have been her dad.
And then you have to, like, forcibly have sex with this older person who you probably are not attracted to and know you don't love. That's not free choice.
Not at all.
That's just abuse all the way around.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get it that there's families that are poverty stricken and they really are trying any kind of means to make things work. I just couldn't sell my family.
I'm not saying that I agree with it or that I think it's okay. I just, as devil's advocate, I think try to just remind myself that I've never been that desperate.
I think I would just take his fucking money.
I mean,
oh, you gonna send me some cash? Cool. Yeah. Keep on sending it. That part. Yeah.
1,000%. Uh-huh. Well, and it's crazy because when he sends her away, right? Because she gets pregnant and he claims, okay, this isn't my kid, and sends her back to the Philippines, but then says, like, ask her family to send him a new bride from her family.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
Which it's like, okay.
Like, I'm just going to soil your whole bloodline right now. Just keep sending me your daughters.
Yeah. Yeah. Just send me the next daughter, please. Yeah. That daughter didn't work out. Yeah, that baby's not mine. So send me the next one and I'll keep sending the money.
I might have laid down with her and, It might be mine. I don't know, but I don't want this.
Well, and then to end up seeing a picture that Emelita sends back to him and just being like, oh yeah, that kid does look like me. Come back. Oh, no. Hard pass. But yeah. Okay. So she sends the picture. He tells her to come back. At this point, we're talking, it's like 1992. Now, in here, there is, okay, do you remember before she got pregnant?
Mm-mm. So this is my recollection of Emelita. She was there, and then she was gone, and then she came back with a 3-year-old.
Okay.
Literally. That's my recollection of her.
So there's a rumor throughout some of those old, writings of the story that when she first gets there, he's very protective of her, and that he had even gotten into like some kind of violent altercation, like some kind of fight with a neighbor over Emelita, like stating that Emelita had, that this neighbor had said something derogatory about Emelita, and gets in this big violent altercation with the neighbor over it.
Yeah, I don't remember. Okay. My street growing up was so incredibly diverse. It is, I swear to God, there was every race of people on that one street. So that is really hard for me to believe, because literally there was everything on that street.
Okay. It's hard for you to believe that someone said something derogatory, or it's hard for you to believe that Jack got in the altercation.
It's hard. Yeah, the altercation is the hard part, because he didn't talk to anybody.
Okay.
Not so much people saying derogatory stuff, because again, it was the 90s. People said a lot of shit that they probably shouldn't have, and were still neighbors. So that could have very easily happened. But as far as him saying something derogatory to anybody else on the street, I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. He was a very forgettable person. And even though he was mean and grumpy, Sergeant Garrett lived 6 doors down, which was my father. And my dad cussed people out. I highly doubt that happened.
Okay.
Like I literally watched an altercation happen at my front door with my father. I don't see that happening down on that end of the street. Just
no, I mean, that's why I'm like, no, you have firsthand.
Yeah. I
literally,
and people would have talked, like, we were always outside. So people would have said something, especially if something like that happened. And from what I remember, Mr. Reeves' neighbors were Vietnamese.
Okay.
They weren't going to say nothing to him.
Yeah, they were hanging out with him.
No.
They weren't vibing.
No.
All right. So she gets pregnant. She ends up coming back, right? So at this point, we're talking October 1994. She's back. It's her, the kid, Jack. October 1994, she goes missing.
Yep.
And he tells everyone that she went to the hypermart and was meeting up her lesbian lover and was going to run away. Now, her friends confirmed that she did have another relationship.
I think I do remember that, because she was really chummy with other women, because I feel like she was just looking for someone to have a connection with. She really was. She was a very young woman, and she had a toddler pretty much, and she wasn't allowed to do anything. So like, she didn't work. So she probably did have somebody that she was spending time with and filling that void with. I know that she did not just up and leave to go be with her lover.
No, 1,000%. Like, that's my whole thing in all of this is like, if you're going to leave with your lover, you're going to take the kid.
Yep. And
like,
her baby was at home. You're not going to leave
your baby there with this man that's abusing you, that is telling you that he's killed all of his prior wives. Like, you're not leaving your
And she was very protective of her son. Like, if her son was outside, she was outside with her son. He couldn't get 2 feet from her.
Which nowadays people are like, okay. But in the 90s.
Yeah. In the 90s, go outside.
Parents were locking you outside, telling you not to come home till the street lights came on.
Like, go outside and play. I don't care. Go, just be outside. Don't leave the yard. Or
just don't leave the neighborhood. I mean, where I grew up, we were getting on bikes and riding miles away from our house, and my parents didn't know where we were half the time.
Girl,
you know, that 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? I can tell you, most of them did not. So her being outside all the time, her being with him and like always being protective of him, like just reconfirms to me, like, you're not just leaving your baby with this psycho.
No, and at least in that, there weren't a whole lot of babies in our neighborhood. Most of the kids were like in elementary school or adolescents. And she did not like walk her baby like outside. I know when I was a mom, because I had my son in 97, so it wasn't too long ago after this happened, I would go outside and like walk this kid, and we would like just be and take him to the park and stuff. She never did that.
They just always stayed.
They stayed in the yard or at the house. She never did that, and her car was pretty much always home.
Yeah, and they also said so back then the cars. You would get those little things that the steering wheel locks.
Don't talk about. It's called the club, ma'am.
Okay, well, I wasn't driving in the 90s. I was alive at this time point, but I was not driving a car. And I grew up where my dad's reputation was the club. Okay, nobody. My dad did not lock his cars. We didn't even lock our front door half the time because nobody in our area would come mess with anything that had to do with my dad. But yeah, so when she ends up going missing, Jack goes off with the son and takes a trip camping to Lake Whitney.
Yep.
They find her car at Hypermart. It doesn't have the club on it.
No, the keys weren't it.
Yeah, everything is like totally how she would never leave it. Like they said that she always set the alarm. She always like did this stuff. None of it was done, which was like super suspicious as it was. And what blows my brain is like at no point in this is anyone going to the kid and being like, hey, what happened to your mom?
Okay, so this baby had been so traumatized, he did not talk to anyone. Like he would talk to his mom. He was one of those kids like you knew he had seen some stuff. And he was a sweet baby, but as far as like being social with other people,
That's so sad.
I'm pretty sure this baby had seen his mom getting beat up and all just
oh, for sure,
all kinds of stuff happening to where he clung to his mother.
Yeah,
like which is why when she went outside with him, she kind of had to force him to like play. Because he didn't really know this is normal. I won't get in trouble for this. Nothing bad is going to happen. So it like, as a teenager, you don't think about stuff like that. Cause he was like of the age where I would like babysit kids and stuff. So you don't think of anything like that. You're just, oh, he's just shy.
Well, and back then especially too. Yeah. It was a lot less common for people to really look that deep into it. You would just always be like,
yeah, it's not our business.
Yeah,
it's not our business. So I'm absolutely certain no one spoke to him. I'm pretty sure his brothers did. I don't think his aunt talked to him about anything. And I guarantee you that his father did not let the police question him.
Probably. That would make sense too.
Yeah.
So at this point, the investigators, I mean, thank God for Emilita's friends, right? Because they're going to the investigators. It's her friends that actually report her missing, not her husband. It's her friends. They report her missing and they're like, hey, like she would never like go without answering us. Like this is so unlike her. Something is wrong. And they start telling the cops, well, she told us that Jack had, threatened to kill her like he did the previous wives and this and that. And now all of a sudden the investigators are like, hold on. And they're getting pretty suspicious, right? So they start looking back into Myung and Sharon. Mm-hmm. Well, the issue with Myung is that when her sister started asking questions and saying like, hey, like she wouldn't have gone in the open water. She had these bruises on her face. So I want an autopsy. He got her cremated.
Yep.
So there's nothing to find. There's nothing to do, which I think is also a part of why we have so much less of her portion of the story, right? But with Sharon, they exhume her body.
Yeah, they exhumed her body.
Yeah.
In the middle of all of this. Yeah. In the middle of looking for Imelita and everything, they exhumed Sharon's body.
So you had mentioned in the beginning, you come home and everything's kind of taped off and you find out that there's been a murder or that she's missing even, whatever the case is. What are you thinking when you're finding out that Sharon's body's being exhumed?
So we found out on the news. So we knew Imelita was missing because on the news, they found her car at Hypermart. It was on the news. And the neighborhood had started searching for her. Her friends were searching for her. Jack was even on there saying, oh, well, she just ran off. I don't know where she is.
He pretended to be helpful throughout.
This was literally on the news. And so, the neighborhood is just like, oh my God, what happened to her? And what about her baby? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So again, with the whole carpet thing, this happened before they taped off the street when he pulled up the carpet.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. So again, like you said, they were watching the house, and I would see them. I was like, "What are you doing over here? You're just
walking by these undercover cops. Like, I hope they don't snatch me and not even realizing they're there.
The school bus is passing them, and y'all just sitting here, just chilling, watching everything that's going on. And it's making me leery. I'm like, "Hey, Mom, so this is happening," and she's like, "Yeah, just go walk around the other way." Okay, cool. So he pulls up all the carpet, and when he pulls up all the carpet, a particular day, he leaves with this boat. No one, we figure he goes on vacation or something. Nobody knows.
He claimed he would. So when he got Sharon's money because he got like a pretty big pension with her death, he bought like a custom travel trailer and all these things that he was using to go camping. Like camping was his thing, supposedly at this point. So during all of Imelita's stuff, like that was supposedly what he'd go do. That's why him and Myung was at Lake Whitney. Lake Whitney was his little getaway, his little spot.
So he leaves with this brand new boat and all the carpet is on the curb. And all of a sudden, there's people picking up remnants of the carpet. Nobody knew who they were, We had what's called trash pickers, and people just come and like pick up old furniture and stuff. And there's people just outside on the curb, and it wasn't trash day, getting pieces of the carpet. A teenager doesn't think anything of it. Minding my own business.
Yep.
Minding my own business. Literally minding my own business. Less than a week later, we come home. I think we had been to the zoo that day. Our street's taped off, and they won't let my family get onto our street until we say, "Hey, we live there." Okay, there was a murder that happened. There's an investigation that happened. Come to find out, they found Imelita's blood in this carpet. And they had a search warrant. And so they're going through Jack Reeves's house at this point with luminol. And the whole house lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yep.
Yeah. Like even the baby's room, the entire house lit up like a Christmas tree. And you don't know any of this until you see it on the news. And she's still missing.
Yeah. And back then, the news, I mean, they just told you everything.
Yeah.
They did not.
It was just like, okay, so there was blood found in the entire house. There's blood all over the kitchen. There's blood in the child's room. There's blood in the bathroom. And there's blood all over this carpet that investigators just so happened, because he put it on the curb. So now it's free for all. Found blood in the carpet.
What an idiot. I mean, at least get rid of the
And
carpet.
This fool was not even at home. So his sons are standing out there. We don't know where our father is. He left.
Oh my gosh.
So finally, I think what happens is one of the boys said, oh, he's, I don't know where he was. He probably was at Lake Whitney. And the police go and pick him up.
Shortly after she goes missing, he does go off to Lake Whitney, him and the littlest son. Because, so she goes missing. The investigators are suspicious. They exhume Sharon's body. They're able to confirm there is absolutely not a chance
that she
could have pulled that trigger. And by process of elimination, has to be him, like no other option. Now, all while this is going on, he's, out and about, good to go. He thinks everything's fine. He's being helpful with the investigations. He's offered like a reward that was dependent on Emelita's safe return home, which like you could offer thousands and thousands back then because you knew that she could not possibly make a safe trip home. You'd already killed her. But yeah, so they end up going through and doing that with Sharon's body. And in that time frame, they arrest him. So he actually gets arrested in, 1995. So she goes missing October 1994. Now we're talking early 1995. He finally gets arrested. And they said, you're being arrested for the murder of your wife. And he said, which one?
Yeah, I did know that.
Which one?
Because I've killed 3.
Yeah, because...
Which one you talk about?
Done it quite a few times now. I'm not really sure who you're talking about. Doesn't narrow it down at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, he ends up, he gets arrested for Sharon's murder. All the while they're going through that process to get him convicted, they're still digging in on Emelita's and trying to find something.
Yeah, because they couldn't find her.
Yeah, which that also blows my mind considering that. So they end up in October of 1995, Emelita's body is found in the same creek bed at Lake Whitney as Young had drowned.
Yep.
There in a shallow grave is Emelita.
Yep.
And it's like literally 8 years prior to her passing in this creek bed was the wife before her that he had threatened to do the same thing. And then he literally did just 8 years later. Like, it's devastating. So they find the body. There is a bone that was missing from the body that indicated to the investigation that she was probably strangled. But then they had also found these little microorganisms. They were like dioxin. I don't remember the name, but these little tiny microorganisms that are only found in water, right? And they were found in the shallow grave, but only where her lungs would have been.
Wow.
So that's how investigators were like, okay, she was probably strangled to some degree, and that could have been during the drowning process, which could have been why that bone could have been like damaged and missing. But they ultimately decide like she was drowned because these little microorganisms were found where her lungs would have been. So water had to have gotten into her lungs prior to her passing. So then they find the grave thanks to this hunter, and the investigators end up taking her son out to Lake Whitney. And he looks at them and says, "Hey, be careful over there. Watch out for the big hole." So
he was with them.
He was with Jack when Jack is burying his mother. And then he had ended up telling investigators, well, yeah, because my dad had hurt my mom in the bathtub.
Yep.
So sadly, we don't know all the details, and we're not going to know all the details on exactly what occurred to her. We're never going to know the full extent of what all she had to go through. But at this point, like, what are y'all, like,
yeah,
all this is unfolding and y'all are sitting there like, wow, I've lived next to this man who at this point, we're talking about body number 4.
And nobody knew that. When you look at your neighbors, you don't automatically assume that your neighbor is a serial killer.
No.
You don't think that there's anything wrong with your neighbor. We knew he was a military vet. Yeah, we knew that. We knew that he possibly had some money because he had a boat. Nobody else on the street had a boat. We knew he was retired. And we knew he had 3 kids. That's essentially what we knew of Jack Reeves. He wasn't overly friendly. When we would have block parties and stuff, he would not come. He just was part of the neighborhood that nobody really talked about until his wife came up missing. And people knew his wife because she was nice and she was friendly and she would wave at you and she would try to be part of the neighborhood. Him, not so much. And so just knowing that he killed her in the house is devastating because, I already knew he had killed her in the house. I wasn't aware of how violent that was.
Yeah.
And it probably happened very often to where her son saw stuff like this just repeatedly, because for a little 4 or 5-year-old to just nonchalantly say, "Oh, well, daddy, hurt mommy in the bathtub." Yeah. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Because at that point, and especially back then too, right? Because they don't have as much TV, they don't have as much whatever. Like, for a kid to say and know something is because they've seen or heard it.
Yep. So, and for him to not be fazed by it, like, this happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, and Jack was also not fazed.
No, but he had killed 4 people at this point.
Yeah.
On the back end of that, though, he requested another mail order bride.
Yes, he did.
Soon after her disappearance.
Yes, he did.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was part of her family or if it was through someone else. But I know that he had requested to have another one come over, and I don't think she came though.
He asked for Emelita's little sister. Yeah. Yeah. Here, Emelita's missing. Her family thinks or is being told that she runs off with some lover. And so he's saying, "She was mine. You owe me the next child." When in the reality,
you killed her.
He killed her. Yeah.
And the sad part is Jack Reeves is still alive.
Yes, he is.
He's still on death row. He's still alive.
Yeah. So he ends up getting, on January 3rd, 1996, he does get convicted for Sharon's murder. Mm-hmm. He was sentenced for 35 years on Sharon's. And then on August 20th, 1996 is when he gets convicted for Emelita's murder. For that one, he gets 99 years. But those are being served concurrently. So basically that means he really just has the 99 years because the 35
life in prison.
Well, actually, he is up for parole in 2026. So next year. Yeah. And at that point, so his birthday is June 20th. So he is currently 84. He'll be turning 85 this year. So depending on when exactly that parole would come up in 2026, you'd be looking at 85 or 86.
So you want to hear something creepy?
Yeah.
June 20th is my son's birthday, and my dad would be 84.
Oh. Wow.
That's not okay. That is not okay. There's nothing okay with that. So I don't tell people that he was my neighbor because of so much that was there. And then, there was a lot that happened on that street. That wasn't the only murder that happened on that street, which I don't tell people about that one either. There's a murder-suicide that happened 3 doors down. So I wanted to bring this story up because we as women suffer from domestic violence so often, and sometimes we don't say anything because we don't know who to tell. But if you're ever in a situation to where you are not being treated the way you know you should be, if you're being hurt, if your children are witnessing you being hurt, please say something to someone so that they know where you are and that things like this don't occur. Because even though this was the 90s, in the early 90s when this happened, it still happens.
Yeah.
And it happens more often than it should. There's protections out there. We have resources now for if you're being hurt, please say something to somebody.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times there's a lot of reasons why we don't come forward. And I say we because I've been in the boat too,
Me too.
I've been there. After going through abuse through my teenage years, then, my relationships after that tended to follow kind of in the same path there for a while. And I was in some very scary situations, and I didn't talk to people and I didn't tell them. And I could give you 1,000 reasons on why I didn't. But in the scheme of it all, you just have to know that you're not alone. Even though I have people tell me all the time, like, I've met you and I would have never, ever suspected that you've gone through anything that you've gone through. Mm-hmm. But that just really goes to show that the majority of us have, right?
Yeah, we have.
So you're not alone. Reach out to someone, lean on someone. And there are so many resources now. So, just make sure you're smart about it, because sadly, when you try to leave, you find out, like in this situation, every single one of them, Sharon, Myung, and Emelita, had all just said they were getting ready to leave when he committed their murders.
Yeah.
So you just have to be really safe.
So on a very somber note, that is our episode this week. Make sure you follow us on hellofriends.com. We are on Instagram. We're on Threads. We're on TikTok. And here lately, I have launched my own literary page. So you can follow it at bwilsonliteraryworks.net. So we will be talking to you. And as always, life be life sometimes.